Yeah, all of them. Like everything. I don't know where to start. It's been a wonderful experience. It's been amazing, but like making comic books on that scale is really hard. I mean, it's challenging for sure. And Joe and we have a very specific, I think, uncompromising kind of producing style or production style for this. And yeah, by doing that, by us kind of saying, hey, we're going to deal with this ourselves. We're going to kind of, manage manage the process and take this burden on like every step of the way. I think it makes a better book. It's something I like quite a bit, but it's also like, it requires crazy amounts of detail. There were days, even like after we submitted files to Humanoids, there were days going back through volumes 1 and 2 for print and being like, we've got an extra space here. And I'm like, how can you see that extra space? And Joe's like, no, it's there, trust me. And then I go into the file and I'm like, yeah, there's an extra space. So we got to like pull that out. like just, that's just one example, but like one crazy thing where you're just like, I thought I had a day off today. No, I don't have a day off. I actually have to go in and like edit like 7 pages of this comic that we made years ago. And then like, there's also like the whole thing of, we just got done with that Kickstarter and now the volumes are up on Indiegogo. And like that month where we were on Kickstarter was like crazy in terms of press and everything. We got a lot of coverage. We worked with great people in terms of getting the word out there. It's just absolutely amazing. But it's also just like daily work,
Let's talk nerdy things like comic books and superheroes with some nerdy peeps, writers, cartoonists, and so much more. So stick around and have some fun with the lovely and adorable Eva Webb.
Space Bastards is a comic about the origins of the intergalactic postal service. It's written by Joe Aubrey and Eric Peterson. Today, we've got Eric Peterson, and we're going to talk about comics. This is going to be a lot of fun. Just fair warning. So much fun ahead. How are you, Eric?
I'm good, Evelyn. How are you?
I am loving life. Everything is beautiful. So the place I like to start this is by asking where you're from. Where does your creative journey begin?
I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, same place as Joe, my co-writer and co-creator. I live out in the desert, yeah, and I've lived here all my life.
So what made you decide to explore comics as a medium for your creative outlets?
Sure. So it was kind of a long journey. I grew up reading comics, and then I originally started as kind of an artist. I knew I wanted to be involved in like visual storytelling of some kind, and then at a young age went off to film school. I graduated high school when I was really young and went off to a kind of a vocational film school out here. And then actually the same place Bill Hader went to school from SNL. And actually also Rob Schneider went to school out there at that same college, I found out recently. But anyways, I was a TV producer for a few years, kind of realized that, I only liked really doing that stuff when it was like projects kind of close to the chest for me. And around that same time I met Joe Aubrey, and we were filming Space Bastard stories in my backyard. Like we built like a spaceship set. We were filming together on that stuff. And then after we would kind of do that on and off over the course of like 5 years, 6 years, a long time. And then, the thing about filming is like especially stuff like Space Bastards is that you can only really get it so far on favors from friends and, cardboard sets or wood sets you build in your backyard, that stuff. It can never really be as big as I think we wanted it to be. And around that time I had started doing other comics and stuff just because I enjoyed writing comics. And then ultimately, Joe and I decided we wanted Space Bastards to be a comic, and we sought Derek Robertson's involvement.
So that leads us into the next question pretty well. What's going on with Space Bastards?
Well, so a lot of the stuff that's being published now, March sees the release of issue 3 of Space Bastards via Humanoids. And at the same time, we just finished a Kickstarter that had these volume 1 and 2 hardcovers. Right now, volume 2 is up on Indiegogo, kind of our leftover stock there. And yeah, it's been amazing. Like since the issues started coming out widely through Humanoids in January, I didn't really expect this many people to like it. Joe and I mostly write for ourselves and hope that other people feel the same way that we do, or, you know, find the same things enjoyable that we do. And luckily, a whole lot of people, it seems, have found it enjoyable. So we're enjoying the ride.
So why talk about like the postal service, about moving packages? Where did that idea
Yes.
find its genesis?
It's a really good question. Like, I don't have like a bone to pick with the Postal Service or anything like that. I think originally Space Bastards came around simply out of my desire to have a lot of scoundrels and smugglers and people having to move through space. So like that meant that they had to have a reason to move stuff from planet to planet, or like a job that had to do with that. And so it was pretty easy for us to make the leap to the Postal Service. That seemed like an excellent plot device. And then I think as I got older, all that stuff from my 20s about working jobs that I ultimately kind of felt a little bit disenfranchised by, or felt like a little bit, you know, it wasn't what I wanted to be spending my time doing, or I felt held hostage in some scenarios. I won't say who, but yeah, some. That kind of led us to, like, I think with Joe's creativity as well, kind of this ultimate culmination of like the rules of the Intergalactic Postal Service and everything you see on the page now.
You know, it's just such a great book, just in general. It's really thick. It's really meaty. There's a lot to it. It really feels like being a person who does this job. It's almost sort of like the worst Uber job in the galaxy, you know?
Well, thanks for the compliment in regards to the book. I appreciate it. It's one of the most important things in our lives. I mean, Joe and I don't have 800 comics we're writing. You know, we spend a lot of time writing Space Bastards, and we really don't commence on writing a script unless the outline is like really, really, as you said, meaty, as you know, unless we feel like there's enough stuff happening and enough meaningful stuff. For me, it's less about the gig economy, even though there's a total comparison there. There's more and more people doing stuff like Uber or Postmates or whatever, or Lyft. I think because of the fact that their freedom is worth more to them, I think, as time goes on. And Space Bastards definitely, I think, deals with that theme of what is your freedom worth, you know, and you know, what are the priorities that you look for in an occupation. It is the deadliest job in the universe, but also too, as Roy Sharpton, the Postmaster General, says, it's also the best, you know.
I could definitely see that. The artwork in this particular book is just stunning, from page 1 all the way to the end of volume 2 so far.
Yeah.
You look at it and it is just absolutely beautiful. How did you go through the process of finding and selecting the right artists to collaborate with?
So, you know, in a perfect world, our process is we have an entire outline for a year of books done. So we kind of know what the lay of the land looks like, and we know kind of what the spine of the series will be like for that year, and then all the other stories that would weave in and out of that. And that plays a role in figuring out like what would work well together, like what would go in and out, you know, of these stories, what weaves well or like forms like a bigger tableau well together. And then also too, like I'm a gigantic comic book fan, but I grew up reading kind of strange comic books. I grew up, even though I live in Phoenix, Arizona, I grew up reading a lot of 2000 AD and Vertigo books and stuff like that. And that stuff really informed my writing and the stuff I cared about. So I've been fortunate in the fact that I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of my heroes, Derek Robertson being a huge one. When we were building those sets for Space Bastards, I know for sure I was reading Transmetropolitan around the same time. And then like we hit this thing where it was kind of like, hey, while Derek's doing this, like it'd be really cool if we actually had other artists painting other corners of the universe, and you know, how can we make this all fit together? And so then I was fortunate enough to meet like Simon Bisley and Clint Langley, Clint, who you see in volume 2 there, and Colin McNeil, who you also see in volume 2. And those guys, just like Derek Robertson or Simon Bisley, who's in the first volume, are like, we become, I think, pretty close friends. I mean, I love those guys. So it's been a wonderful working relationship. But then it's also been, I think, like a really good, I love working with them. Like getting pages, like writing a script for them is amazing. Something I never thought I would have the opportunity to do in my life. And I've had the opportunity to do it multiple times for people. And then like getting pages back from them is like Christmas every single time that happens. Like, it's just always amazing to see their take on it.
You know, it's interesting. You should mention 2000 AD because when I read the book, that was the first thing that it reminded me of. And I'm thinking more just in terms of the way the story flows from start to finish. It really feels like, you know, Judge Dredd and all the 2000 AD stuff that you read in the construction of it. Was that intentional?
I don't I don't know if it was intentional so much as I can't help it. Like, your listeners won't be able to see this, but the room that I'm talking to you from, that's all 2000 AD comics over there.
That is
Here's
beautiful.
a Judge Dredd pinball machine. Yeah, it's a Judge
Nice.
Dredd pinball machine. And like, I grew up reading a lot of Pat Mills and John Wagner and all that stuff. And I don't think I try to necessarily emulate them, but I've talked quite a bit with John and stuff. And I think, I don't know how he feels about it, but I think by me growing up reading so much John Wagner, there's probably some of John's, writing ethos or whatever, like in me somewhere. I don't think I can really deny it.
Nice. What's your favorite John Wagner story?
That's a hard one. That's a really, really hard question for me to answer. But I can tell you the way I got into 2000 AD was because I saw the Judge Dredd Stallone movie when I was like 13. And I'm not saying that's an amazing movie or anything like that, but like when you're 13 years old and you're used to reading superhero comics and, you just found The Watchmen or whatever, like it's Judge Dredd's, that movie is a pretty great, amazing new world to look at. And then my grandma worked next door to a comic book shop over in Lompoc, California. And she asked me, for Christmas, what should I send you from this comic shop? And I had just seen that movie and I said, send me 2000 AD stuff. And luckily she didn't like read any of it. Like she didn't look at any of it and realize how adult it was, I think. But one of the books that was in there first that I was like one of my first forays into Judge Dredd was a book called America. It was a collection, like a one-shot reprint of a story by John Wagner and Colin McNeil, where actually Dredd's like kind of almost an antagonist, but or like a side character. He's not really the central focus of it. But I think that cracked me open. Like I think when I read that, I was like, yeah, I was just in. I would say that in terms of other Judge Dredd stories, Necropolis and Dead Man, like when I was older, like a few years older, those stories actually kind of really made me like buy everything. Like I was like, this is such an amazing transformation that they have there. I have to buy everything that they've done. And then a lot of stuff, strangely enough, a lot of stuff that came out when Andy Diggle was the editor of 2000 AD, even though I didn't know it was Andy Diggle, because it always is like Tharg. It's never the actual editor's name. And I was too young to know how to research that stuff or figure out who it was. But a lot of the stuff that came out during that period actually ultimately made me like become a lifetime subscriber. I mean, there's some really, really great stuff in the early 2000s and late 90s and all that. So,
America was formative for me. Like that opening scene where Judge Dredd is standing by the Statue of Liberty, and then right above the Statue of Liberty, the Statue of Justice is just towering over it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's you can't forget that iconography. It's so strong and so good. Kudos to John Wagner and Colin McNeil, who, by the way, I'll send it to you after the show, but I've got a bunch of pictures of me hanging out with Colin because I flew over to Scotland and hung out with him prior to all the outbreak and all the stuff that shut down. But like Colin McNeil in the right light looks more like my dad. Like he looks like he could be my dad more than my actual dad does. It's really, really crazy. We have the same nose and stuff. It's really
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Yeah, I grew up on Judge Dredd. When I went to boarding school as a teenager, there was this English kid, and he had it was like a decade and a half worth of Judge Dredd and 2000 AD comics. And I spent so much time with him that he just gave me the box, and he said, you need these more than I do. And all of that stuff was just amazing. It's so much fun.
It's so good. Yeah. I think at the same time I was reading America, in that batch was also a bunch of the heavy metal Dread stuff where Simon Bisley does the art. And I had read that before I read Slain the Horned God. And then I read Slain the Horned God by Simon Bisley. And I was like, that's amazing. And then I was in Heathrow Airport literally a day after meeting Simon and then hanging out with him for an extended amount of time and having a lot of fun and us just hitting it off. And I had asked him, would you ever consider doing a Space Bastard story? And we ended up having a dialogue over email. And I was in Heathrow Airport, like jet lagged, like about to board my plane to head back to the States. And he said yes. And it was like, it's like same thing with Derek said yes to, or really Clint Langley or Colin or anybody else. It was just kind of like this moment of like, are you kidding me? Like the guy who did Slaying the Horned God is going to do like a Space Bastards issue. And then it turned out he did many more after that as well. But yeah, I would love to go back in time and like tell my 13-year-old self, like, see this guy, like right here, he's going to be FaceTiming you in the morning, like waking you up and asking for notes on his pages and stuff, you know. Like it's crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah. That is just beautiful.
Yeah. We could have a whole other podcast where you and I just talk about 2000 AD for like an hour.
Oh yeah, we could.
It's refreshing.
We definitely could.
It's totally refreshing. Yeah.
It's the best thing in the world. I remember like when I was a kid, the 2000 AD comics and the Judge Dredd comics were just so visually stunning compared to sort of the flat color Marvel and DC stuff.
Yeah. I was sitting there. It's happened a few times. I've had a beer with Jock and Andy Diggle, and who of course did Green Arrow Year One, which is a seminal book for me. Like I loved that book in high school. I was like that miniseries. I was like, that's amazing. It's just so good. And then, but it's the funniest thing sitting with those guys, and I'll say like Tharg, or I'll say like, yeah, you know, when I read the prog, and they'll be like, Jock and Andy will be like, sorry, Eric, it's weird to hear an American say Prague. Like it's strange to hear you refer to all the nomenclature of 2000 AD and all that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I grew up with it, you know.
Nice. So when you read comics these days, do you find that you're enjoying paper or digital?
Paper, yeah. There's some old book stories I've done that I found digital to be incredibly helpful because, you know, they're old things that I don't really want. I'd rather dump all my money into Space Bastards as opposed to spending a bunch of money on like the books that like taught me how to write, or where I was kind of like cutting my teeth. So the cool thing is like digital allows me to kind of get that stuff still out there for people that care, or people that are like, you know, gonna hunt that stuff down. Though I don't recommend it. Space Bastards is like way better. But like for me personally, I started reading digital comics when I'm on the road, and sometimes for work I'm on the road a lot, and that's super helpful. But like when I'm actually at home and I'm like reading stuff, I still, nothing beats a good hardcover, or like for, you know, even single issues, like just opening that up and getting that smell and that texture and everything.
So digital is sort of like a market reality now. When you're creating a book, do you have to plan for digital differently? Does it affect the way you write stories?
I don't think so. No, I don't think. I'm trying to think if there's been any scenario where that's really impacted how I write, and I don't think so. No, there was a time when I was starting out in writing comics, I would put my comics online, like in the form of a web comic, like count on coming back once or twice a week to get a new page, and so a lot of times that would inform my writing, like the serialized page approach, and that kind of taught me to have something important on every page, or really the placement of stuff to make people, like in the last panel, want to turn the page. But I don't know if that's necessarily just a digital thing so much as just the webcomic side of things, when you know that you have to keep readers, you have to make readers come back in a few days, you know, or subscribe. Yeah,
that's true. So I realized that this is a book about space aliens for the most part, but do you think a lot about diversity and inclusion when you create Space Bastards?
Yeah, I mean, we do. To be honest with you, I don't really consider Space Bastards a male dominated story, even though on the onset it is. I think readers that stick around for the whole thing are in for some nice surprises. Keep in mind, I think one of my favorite things about the story is that it's the Intergalactic Postal Service is owned by a deeply flawed male here who surrounds himself with people that maybe don't really get the right end of that relationship, and there's a lot of consequences from that, and there's a lot of things to explore from that as well. I can tell you by the end of year one, it was one of that topic in itself was something that Joe and I were actually pretty proud of how we kind of the turns we took and the things that we explored there. Because I am very proud that Space Bastards doesn't necessarily have like a agenda socially outside of what's in its theme and what I think is readily apparent. But the way that we explore those themes in new ways Yeah, it's exciting to me. I sit here like with like eagerly waiting for people to read additional issues and all that stuff, and kind of seeing how people appreciate the changes to come and some of the stuff that's in there.
So writing an ensemble cast is pretty challenging. There's just so much going on in Space Bastards. How do you get to, or rather, how do the characters find their voices?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. These are all good. I think there's a little bit of me in most of the ensemble cast, and I think there's a little bit of Joe in most of the ensemble cast. And we've been fortunate in the fact that we've worked with these characters together for so long, and then with them taking shape with Derek's hand, and then the other artists kind of following suit as well. That whole thing has made it to the point where in any given story, like Space Bastard's story, Joe and I will kind of innately know what those characters, how they would react and what they would do. And that lends itself to, like, I don't want to compare us to Pixar or anything like that, but it's kind of like this nice sort of like structural rubber band where we're able to say, like, wouldn't it be like really terrible for these characters if this happened? And we go, yeah, I know exactly how that guy would react to it or whatever, Yeah, it's made it, writing the ensemble cast has become a lot less challenging, I think, since we really knew the ensemble cast. And that took some time. Like it definitely took, I don't think, like, certain characters like Chuck, like, didn't really, I don't think, become fully formed until, like a year or two in or something like that. It took us some time to kind of all of a sudden realize, like, oh yeah, like this is what he's all about. This is the depth version of Chuck versus like the surface version of somebody like that.
So when you're producing a new comic, especially when it's your first comic, is Space Bastards your first comic?
No, so I've done. I would prefer if it was my first comic. I think at the risk of people like running off and saying everything I wrote in my 20s and stuff. But I think Space Bastards. I can tell you this, is I think Space Bastards is the first comic where like I still to this date read. I did it yesterday actually. I forget why. Somebody mentioned something to me, and I was like, I'm gonna reread like issue 1, and like I still reread issue 1, and I think I'm pretty proud of that. Like it hasn't like gone stale with me or anything like that. There's nothing there that I'm kind of like, you know what, I would do it differently now. I think that's kind of a zenith of my writing. I'm pretty proud of.
Were there any crazy, unexpected challenges just sort of whirling around as you produced Space Bastards?
Yeah, all of them. Like everything. I don't know where to start. It's been a wonderful experience. It's been amazing. But like making comic books on that scale is really hard. I mean, it's challenging for sure. And Joe and we have a very specific, I think, uncompromising kind of producing style or production style for this. And yeah, by doing that, by us kind of saying, hey, we're going to deal with this ourselves. We're going to kind of, manage the process and take this burden on like every step of the way. I think it makes a better book. It's something I like quite a bit, but it's also like, it requires crazy amounts of detail. There were days, even like after we submitted files to Humanoids, there were days going back through volumes 1 and 2 for print and being like, we've got an extra space here. And I'm like, how can you see that extra space? And Joe's like, no, it's there, trust me. And then I go into the file and I'm like, yeah, there's an extra space. So we got to like pull that out. like just, that's just one example, but like one crazy thing where you're just like, I thought I had a day off today. No, I don't have a day off. I actually have to go in and like edit like 7 pages of this comic that we made years ago. And then like, there's that. There's also like the whole thing of, we just got done with that Kickstarter, and now the volumes are up on Indiegogo. And like that month where we were on Kickstarter was like crazy in terms of press and everything. We got a lot of coverage. We worked with great people in terms of getting the word out there. It's just absolutely amazing. But it's also just like daily work,
So where does your creative energy come from? Where do you find your zen?
Yeah, another good question. Let's see. Life experiences is, I think, the biggest one. Joe and I have known each other for 15 years as well, so that kind of helps. Like, we're a little bit different in age, but we've grown a little bit together. So like, I can tell you, Joe's seen me at you know, like all stages of my life in terms of ups and downs and all that stuff. And I also too, like I've got kids and, you know, there's stuff from that, or I'm a dad now versus, you know, when we were filming Space Bastards and I was like in my 20s and dumb and, or more dumb than I. So I think that's a big part of it. I also too, like when I write, I only listen to like certain types of music, and I've been that way for like 15 years. I've listened to surf rock mostly when I write. And the reason is because it's frenetic and it's fast, but there's no lyrics, like there's no vocals to distract me. I've been a cigar smoker, and like I would, a lot of times I'd have the ritual of like firing up a big fire pit and then like having a cigar or two and just writing for hours and hours. And that definitely was kind of like almost like a religion for me. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it. So I'm going to have to figure out like my new ritual. But like that was kind of a big part, is like cranking surf rock from like the 60s and 70s and onwards. And you know, yeah. And like just trying to just pull myself into that world. One of the things that also helps too is like so we'll outline a story and then choose the artist, like when we know like this is the perfect artist for this, you know, out of the people that we know we want to work with. And then we'll write. And so what that does is it gives me the ability when I'm actually writing the script to like pull a bunch of whatever it is, right? If it's Derek pulling Transmetropolitan or The Boys off the shelf and like reading that before I go to bed, so that way like that, like his visual language is in my mind, or like Simon Bisley like pulling Slain or Judge Dredd and stuff, or America for Colin McNeil, or ABC Warriors or something for Clint Langley, stuff like that. So that way, like when I'm actually writing the script, I'm kind of hopefully in sync a little bit with those guys, though ultimately it's their pen, you know, that does the work. But yeah, that's kind of the process.
So I was wondering, do you have to sort of speak a different language when you deal with different artists? Not necessarily like, you know, a physical language, but like a creative one. Or is each collaboration different? Or do you have like sort of a consistent thought on how those work?
Yeah, it's different. It's different for everybody for sure, like 100%. But I don't know if it's creatively different necessarily. Again, when I'm writing for that specific artist and when I kind of am digesting a bunch of their work around that same time, I do think that plays into us playing to their strengths. Like, hey, this artist does really, really great with action scenes that are like a lot of tinier panels with a lot of succinct movement, like staccato movement. Whereas this artist like does really well with like these big wide spreads that encompass a lot of action. Stuff like that will kind of play into it. But I would say the bigger thing is just like actually working with them, kind of understanding like what their process is like and their pet peeves, the stuff that you know is just kind of like, you know, piss them off or whatever, or like what's the stuff that you think they'd respect out of the relationship creatively. All of that I think is different between the artists.
What inspires you?
Music's a big thing, and movies as well, and TV and comics. Media like fiction. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that really does. Space Bastards, how can I put this? I think I pull inspiration into Space Bastards in different ways depending on what I'm working on. So like structurally for me, The Wire played like a big role, even though like Space Bastards and The Wire don't have anything to do with each other. But I just always loved how that story, that show worked in terms of its pacing, and then also too just how the flow between episodes and the character work there. So that definitely inspired me when it came to Space Bastards. Batman the Animated Series, I talk about this all the time, but like I'm a huge Bruce Timm DCAU fan, like the stuff from the 90s, and like I grew up devouring Batman the Animated Series. And so not that like in our minds we're like, whoa, it should look like Batman the Animated Series. It's not like it's all like matte paintings, you know, and like weird dark backgrounds or anything like that. It's nothing visual, but like character wise, and like Joe and I think do have a little bit of like, I think we've absorbed a little bit of something from there. Like, I mean, I wasn't around for the creation of Batman in the Animated Series. Like I didn't work on the staff or anything, but when somebody does like an episode like Harley and Ivy, you know, and you're like, this is just an episode everybody needs to see. Like this isn't necessarily going to change the world of Batman, but this is an episode that kind of does, because we get to know Harley a lot better and her relationship with Joker, and then her relationship with somebody else like Ivy. Stuff like that is kind of the same conversations that Joe and I think have grown to have, where we're like, yeah, we really want to do this story, and it can kind of weave into the main story, but it's something different that I think would explore a lot more of these characters, but still be frenetic and still be a Space Bastard story and do something unique. Like, so yeah, I would say like structurally and stuff I pull from these different places. Again, like I said with the music thing, it's like Dick Dale music or like surf music, punk music has been a big thing for me with Space Bastards. Joe actually put a Spotify, like a Space Bastards music list up on Spotify and stuff. And like when I look at all those songs, I'm like, yeah, like this is what I wouldn't listen to this while I'm writing it because I don't like vocals when I'm writing, but like this is the stuff that's in my head, I think, when we're writing Space Bastards.
So, what's your favorite comic of all time?
I don't know if I mean, that's hard. So what I'll do is I'll tell you this is like, um, I can answer it, and I feel bad for like other writers that I'm like friends with if they like don't make the list. But The Watchmen is still one of the most quality comics and scripts I've ever read. Like I remember when I was like in my teens, I don't know, one of the hardcovers or something. I remember reading like the 100-page issue one script or whatever for Watchmen, and like just being like giving up. Like I'm never going to be able to do this. Like I will never write something as good as The Watchmen. I just feel like it's just one of the most quality books ever. And not alone in that category. There's a million quality books, but Watchmen for me is one of the I think it's the book I read when I was a teenager where I like threw the book over my shoulder in frustration afterwards, being like, I'm never going to be able to be Alan Moore like ever. And I still feel that way, proud as I am of Space Bastards and stuff. My favorite comic though, I've been a lifelong Preacher fan. And not lifelong, I guess. The book came out when I was in my teens, but I still to this date, like I will read the books I reread like every 3 years are like Preacher, Sandman, Transmet. I mean, that's the stuff that Authority. Authority is kind of I hate to say guilty pleasure because it's just so good, but it's like I don't really read a lot of superhero books, but it's like the superhero book that I can't ever leave out. Like I always go back to it because it's just amazing. And but yeah, V for Vendetta as well. And then yeah, like what's weird about 2000 AD is like I would say about every 5 years, I just get psychotic, and I will read all of it in order. Like, and it takes like 2.5 years, and literally I'll just be like, nah, like I'm just gonna get started, and then some of it's a bit like thematically it's not dated, but like stylistically it's kind of dated, but you get through it, it's still you love it for the quality that it is and what it stands for and the type of stories and unique the unique like pitches that are there in Future Shocks and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's kind of it, is like I'm totally a 2000 AD like addict. Like I will every 5 years like just embark on a journey of reading all of it again, but then also too these other books I love. I love Preacher. Like Preacher, I think brought me to tears by the end.
Yeah, I've done that with 2000 AD. I've only done it twice so far.
Yeah, it takes a long time. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. Yeah,
I totally understand why you'd want to though, because you look back and you just think to yourself, oh my God, there's got to be some detail I missed somewhere.
I find you're absolutely right. I'll find something new every time. But I mean, it's like going to college again. I'll be like, hey, I'll see everybody on the other end of this.
For sure. What are you reading now?
I've been so this is the thing, is like I'm upset at myself of my lack of reading over the last like 2 years, simply because I've just been so busy, and then I got kids, and like it's kind of like you finish the day, and I have a day job, so like I work all day, and then I finish and work on comics and and all that. So I've been pretty slackerly in my reading, but then just recently I kind of got picked up again, and I'm pouring through stuff I've missed. Matt Fraction's Hawkeye is what I'm like just embarking on right now, and it's really great. It's amazing, and that was partly Joe. Joe loves that series and was like, yeah, dude, you got to read it. And I was like, is it like Punisher Max good? Like Garth Ennis's run on Punisher Max? He's like, it's amazing. It's really, really good. And he's not wrong. It's really, really great.
So I think you've sort of covered this in some of the earlier questions, but I like to ask people what creators inspire them.
Yeah, it's a long list. I get obsessed easily. So like I brought up The Wire earlier, and like I researched everything about about him, like the creator of The Wire, and like his career and everything for like 6 months, and that was like a big thing. Or like the production of Batman the Animated Series is another one I mentioned earlier. Like poured into all of that and bought books and all that. Like, but I think John Wagner in recent years, it's kind of always one of these weird things because it's like if people were to ask me my favorite writers and stuff, there's not really like there's not stuff that surprises people. Like I would be like of course, yeah, I greatly admire Alan Moore and I greatly admire Garth Ennis, stuff like that. Like Garth, I don't think would remember me from Adam, but I sat at a table once at a pub between Steve Dillon and Garth, and like best night of my life. There's all that stuff which I don't think would really surprise people. But then with John Wagner, I always feel like, God damn, this guy, like, just like, I don't feel like John is necessarily a showboat. Not to say that some of those other names I said are, but it's like John to me is like the soft-spoken, like, muse that has like always been there for me. Like every time I just sit there and I reread like a John Wagner story, I'm always so enamored by the nuance of it and like how real the characters are, and yet it manages to surprise you with twists, but then they're not. You're surprised because they seem like once it happens, you're like, yeah, of course this would happen. Like that's brilliance to me. I think that's a talent that is kind of understated a lot of times. To get the twist, and then you actually, when you experience the twist, it doesn't seem out of left field. It seems like, yeah, this is really crazy that like we didn't consider the ramifications of this. Of course we're going to go here. That to me is,
totally.
It's an amazing talent. Yeah.
John Wagner is the only writer I know of that can spoil his own story by telling you exactly what's going to happen in the end at the beginning and still have you surprised by it.
Yeah. And he's an absolute gentleman. He's amazing. He's one of the real pleasures of my life, or fortunes of my life, I think, was meeting John and getting a chance to just tell him how much his work means to me. Yeah.
So are you ready for the fun questions?
Yeah, I'm ready for the fun question.
Awesome. What's your favorite food?
Fish. Specifically, I would say mahi. If I can't get that, I eat a lot of salmon. Fish.
What's the best swear word?
Am I allowed to say it?
Of course you are.
Yeah, cunt.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah, I don't say it a lot. I really don't say it a lot. I promise. If my mom listens, if my mom listens to this, I don't say it hardly at all. But yeah, it's just so disarming, especially in America. Speaking with a lot of my UK friends or whatever, it's just like it's equally, I think, disarming over there. But it's not frowned upon. It's not like thrown about. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
I don't understand why people get so offended over that one, honestly, but it's okay.
Anytime I've said it at a bar here, which is again a rare occasion, but like when I've like been in an argument or like if I said it as a joke or something, somebody reminds me of it like a week later. Like some people do not let it go. They don't let it go at all. They're like, hey man, I remember when you called this person, blah blah. And I'm like, I didn't mean it. Like it was,
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So would you say are you more of a cat person or a dog person?
I'm a cat person, totally.
Okay, so you wake up in the morning and you're imbued with superpowers. Do you consider yourself a superhero? What do you do with those powers?
What's the power?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm a pretty steady guy, so I think I would like take time to like secretly figure. I would do the Peter Parker thing. I'd be like, this is weird. We need to not show anybody, and we need to just kind of like figure this out first. And then, yeah, I would go through a whole power and responsibility arc. Mine would be a lot more longer than like, was that Amazing Fantasy 15? Somebody's going to crucify me if I screw up that whatever Peter Parker's first appearance is. But whatever that arc is before, with Uncle Ben dying, like my arc's going to be way longer. It's going to take years of me learning responsibility. Yeah.
Nice. Do you have a costume in mind?
I don't know. I don't have. Yeah, oh God. Yeah, I do. Joe and I used to play this game online called City of Heroes. In fact, a routine from me and Joe ended up forming my daughter's name like years and years later. So Joe, in a way, kind of ended up naming my daughter. But that's a whole story in itself. But like, we would create our characters on this MMO RPG where, you know, and you figure out how they look. And mine was like a ripoff. I stole a whole lot. I mean, understand I was like 19 or something when I was doing it. I like stole a whole lot from like that Green Arrow Year One arc. Like they would, when they would, because you type in your origin story and all that, and like I pulled a lot of it from there. Like not necessarily the original Green Arrow origin, but like the Jock and Andy Diggle version. And then like, yeah, that outfit. Anytime they brought back the game recently, like an open source kind of version of it, and like, yeah, they when I leapt back into it, it was the exact same costume. It was like this like long jacket, leather jacket thing, and then like kind of a bunch of rocker stuff, and like a way better beard than what I can actually in reality grow. Yeah, but in terms of like real life costumes, I don't really cosplay. I don't do any of that stuff. But last year, I treated myself and I got this Iron Man costume. And here, I'll show you real quick. Again, your listeners won't know, but like it's real. Like it works and stuff. I can't fly in it, but like the face mask like lifts up and all that stuff. And I've worn that out like once or twice around Halloween, like drinking, and it's like amazing. It's like you feel like Tony Stark. I understand. I never understood cosplayers at all, and then like totally figured it out. Like within 5 minutes of putting that on, I was like, I feel like Tony Stark. It's amazing.
That is epic. That's a great costume too.
Thanks.
Okay, so 100 years from now, NASA throws your entire creative output into a space capsule. Sometime later, in deep space, aliens find it. What do they think of it?
A lot of my stories are about flawed people. And I think a lot of them are like exacerbated or like hyperbole versions of stuff that I've either experienced myself or I've witnessed best friends or like close friends go through. Stuff that I can like write pretty naturally about. So that means like, yeah, all my characters are not great people. So I think that's the biggest mistake aliens could make, is reading my stuff and thinking like they would read that stuff and just be like, God damn, good thing we never went to Earth. Good thing we left these humans alone. And it's like, I don't really do that. I don't feel the need to do that because, I do it because it's fun. I mean, that's a big part of it for sure. But then it also too, when you start from when you have these characters that are flawed and real, you're able to explore and travel so much more with them. You're able to like put them in circumstances that you know, that you kind of get growth out of, or maybe no growth, and you kind of explore that, you know. There's more stuff to do, I think, with those kind of scenarios.
So I hate to do this, Eric, but that is the end of our show. Where can people find you online?
I think through the Space Bastards stuff, people could find me personally online, but I think they'd have to read Space Bastards to figure it out. So I would encourage that. If you want a personal relationship with one of the creators of Space Bastards, read Space Bastards and then try to guess what my name is on social media. But I can tell you on Instagram, we're space_bastards, I believe, and on Twitter, space_bastards. And most of the updates come out first via Twitter, so I would definitely recommend there. Definitely follow us. We have a mailing list on spacebastards.com, and we also on Facebook. I know we have the Intergalactic Postal Service on there. So if you do that, that's a good start. I will tell you, if you sign up on our mailing list on spacebastards.com, we automatically register you on parceltransfer.com, which is basically like a role-playing site. It's like Facebook if Facebook existed in the Space Bastards universe. Like you make your own Space Bastard on there and steal packages and earn credits and all that stuff.
Oh, I love that. That is cool.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
And now, babies, it's time to close the show. I wanted to say thank you for listening, supporting us, and following us online. Our listeners are the best people ever, and we love them. Thank you. Titular Characters is a show about the people who create the things we love. It's hosted and produced by the adorable Eva Webb. That's me. Illustrations and animation prerequisites by Eva, who is awesome. We love her. Opening theme by Antonia Marquis. Closing theme by Mikey Flash of Speed Force Music. Sound services by Brogan Malloy. And a special thanks to the Ghost. Well, that's it, my lovelies. That's all we got. Join us next time for another exciting adventure in cyberspace. Love ya.